When it comes to the success of your individual low content books, as well as the success of ultimately your entire low content publishing business as a whole, design matters. Too often, I see publishers focus really hard on the research portion only to turn around and treat design as nothing more than an afterthought, and then try and remedy their poor sales with an ad spend. And I've even seen other YouTubers in this space bragging about how crappy their designs are. These are usually the same people that insist that it's absolutely imperative to spend money on ads in order to create any type of success. Now, while sound research is what's going to get the eyeballs onto your book to begin with, it's an appealing design that's going to make the customer ultimately pull out their wallet and purchase your books, which is obviously the ultimate goal. Now, at best, poor design is going to minimize your sales. And at worst, poor design can kill your sales completely and result in no one ever pulling out their wallet to buy your book, regardless of how much time and effort you put into that sound research. Now, you should always be thinking about ways to elevate your design. It doesn't matter how skilled you are. If you're just starting out or if you've got loads of experience, you should always be thinking about how you can continue to improve your design skills. Improved design is going to make an impact on your overall sales. So today I want to go through the top 5 cover design mistakes that I see out there on a regular basis when I'm browsing those virtual bookshelves. And we'll talk about what those mistakes are and how we can go about avoiding them for your own books. If you're new here, my name is Rachel Harrison-Sund, and I help people to generate passive income selling journals, planners, notebooks, and more on the Kindle Direct Publishing platform. If that sounds good to you, then be sure to hit subscribe and don't forget to hit the bell so you can be notified every time I put out one of these videos, which is every single Monday. So the first mistake is not considering your target audience. Before you start designing, you need to know exactly who you're designing for. If you don't know who you're designing for, that means you're designing for nobody, and that is going to result in a very boring, bland design. If you have in your mind who it is you're designing for, then you're going to be able to come up with a style, a color palette, typography. All of those choices are going to be geared toward a specific audience, and that is going to help that book's design appeal to that audience. So think about it. Is it busy professionals who like a more clean and modern look? Is it teenage girls who have more of a whimsical flair? Is it millennial Christians? Is it seniors with more of a traditional sensibility? Once you've got that narrowed down, now some ideas are going to come to mind about what types of designs are actually going to appeal to that specific crowd. So let's take a look at a couple of examples here just to illustrate what I'm talking about. So this first book here, you can see this person has not considered who their audience is. This design is pretty boring, it's pretty bland, and I really can't think of any specific group of people that this might appeal to. So again, if it's not talking to anyone specifically, it's talking to no one. This would be a book that probably 9 people out of 10 will just scroll past. There's nothing really eye-catching about it, and it's not really clear who it's for. Now this book, on the other hand, it's pretty clear who this book is for. They've been very intentional in their design. There's a very specific style that they've used here, and this is clearly aimed at women who really like colorful floral patterns. Now, we haven't dug super specific into, a very narrow demographic here, but we can at least say with some certainty that, like I said, this is geared toward women, women who like more feminine, brightly colored, floral types of patterns. So I think this is a pretty good idea, or a pretty good example rather, of someone who's really considering their audience before sitting down and making any design decisions. So the next design mistake is poor layout or composition. So when we talk about layout or composition, what we're talking about is where elements like imagery or text is actually placed onto the page. So this can include things like a weak hierarchy. So you really want to consider hierarchy when you're laying something out. And that just means, what element do you want to stand out first? Is that a piece of artwork? Is it the title? whichever of those elements is that you want the customer to see first and primarily, that is the element that you want to stand out from all of the other elements. And all of the other elements should take a back seat and be treated in such a manner where they sit back. So, whether it's title or subtitle, any of these design elements, if they're the same size, then nothing's going to stand out and you're going to end up with a weak hierarchy. The next thing could just be too many elements on the page, so things look cluttered. It could be the title and the subtitle being the same size. These are all ways that contribute to having a weak hierarchy. So you really want to think about what element do you want to stand out first, what element do you want to stand out second, third, and everything should be sitting back from one another accordingly. Because if you emphasize everything all at once, then nothing ends up getting emphasized at all. The other things that can contribute to a poor composition are misalignment of certain objects. So I see this so often where the title is not centered properly, or there are other elements on the page that you can tell were meant to be centered, but they just haven't been. It can be text placed over top of a really busy background. So that contributes to the text becoming nearly illegible because, it might be like a light colored text over top of a light colored pattern and things just become lost. We could be talking about poor treatment of a back cover. So some people just leave the back cover blank and they don't even consider it. What's really nice is pulling whatever those design elements are that you have used on the cover, pulling that over to the back cover. So there's some nice continuity between the front and the back cover. And just, generally ignoring the basic fundamental principles of design. Now, some of these things can be a little bit tricky to get a hang of right away if design is new to you. I have left a link in the description to some further resources that will explain those fundamentals of design, in a really accessible way for you. So I would definitely suggest checking that out just for some further clarification on some of the things that I'm talking about here. But let's go ahead and look at a couple of examples of what I'm talking about here. So let's look at this first example of a gratitude journal. All right, so firstly, it's got some great potential. There's an interesting pattern that's being used in the background. They've taken out that bumblebee element, brought that forward. That's great. So that there's some real potential here, but there's a misalignment of the main design element. You can see that it's slightly off to the left. So that just throws the whole thing off, makes it look really unprofessional and amateurish. Also, the text, it just doesn't stand out against the busy background. It's barely legible. So this is a problem, and this all contributes to this book having, a less than perfect composition and a less than perfect layout. All right, so let's contrast that with this gratitude journal. This one has got a very beautiful, very strong composition. It's got a strong hierarchy. The title stands out. Even though this cover has a lot of different design elements, the title is really standing out here. There's different sizes used for the title, the subtitle, and author name. There's the main title is treated with white over top of all the darker colors in the background. So this all works together to create a really strong hierarchy. Also, they've used a harmonious color palette here, and it's a really striking cover. It's really beautiful, and they've got, it's a great composition. So the next big mistake I see is poor typography. So there's a bunch of different things at play here. This could be fonts that don't match the style of the book, or the artwork, or the target audience. It could be just really low quality free fonts that have really bad kerning between the letters. It could be poor font pairing choices, trying to pair two different fonts that really don't work well together. It could be legibility issues. The text might be too big or too small so that when someone is scrolling down through the results, you really can't see what that type says. So those are all some of the combined issues that I see when it comes to typography. So again, let's take a look at a couple of examples. So first, this just looks like a very poor quality free font. And more importantly here, it doesn't match the artwork. So the background artwork is kind of a somber, gothic themed art. It's got kind of a skull in the background, cemetery scene. This kind of creates a pretty somber vibe. Yet the text is this bright white, casual, sort of irreverent font. So the style of that font really does not match the style of the artwork. It's a complete mismatch. And then also, it's really awkward placement of the text. I can't tell if this was supposed to be centered. It looks like probably it was meant to be centered, but it isn't, so it just looks misaligned. So this would be poor typography. Now let's contrast that with this teacher planner. So this is a really nice complementary font pairing. We have two completely different fonts here, but they really work in synergy together. They look great together working as a team. The typography is a good size. It's legible at a small size. It stands out from the background, even though it's got quite a busy background. That typography really stands out. And the fonts that have been chosen here really match the style of the artwork, which is this kind of whimsical, irreverent, kind of casual style. So this, I think, is a great use of typography. So number 4 is poor image quality. So this could be anything like using really cheap and cheesy clip art. It could be using cheesy photography. It could be unappealing color palette. So, just using a color palette of colors that really don't work very well together. Either they clash, or they just don't match well, or they're of a similar value, so they vibrate and kind of hurt the eyes when you look at it. Or it can just be as simple as using a low resolution image that ends up looking pixelated. So again, let's go ahead and we'll look at a couple of examples. All right, so firstly, we've got a graduation guest book here, and the image quality here just isn't very good. It's a little bit blurry, it looks a little bit cheesy, and it ends up just in general looking a little bit cheap. Now contrast this with this other graduation guest book. They've used some nice imagery. It's a good composition. The imagery is crisp and clear, and it works well with the overall design of this book. So the 5th mistake that I often see is overuse of the same design, or a lack of differentiation between all of the books in your catalog. So specifically what I'm talking about here is when you go to someone's author page and you just see basically the same book, but just the background art has been swapped out. Whereas maybe the title is the same, or the way that the typography has been treated is exactly the same across multiple books, and just that background pattern or artwork has been swapped out. Or it can be the reverse of that, where it's the exact same piece of background artwork, and then they've just used that on an endless supply of different types of low content books. So you're just seeing a wall of it looks almost like the exact same book because the artwork is completely the same in the background, but the titles are swapped out. So this can be a very confusing experience for a customer who's actually gone to your author page to check out what other books you have on offer. And, when they go to your author page and see that, they're not really going to be seeing any further variety. And you want them to come to your author page, see a nice variety of original, differentiated books that you can get them interested in. So this just really goes back to the first point, which is consider your audience. So no matter what type of book you're designing, if you're sitting down to design a group of guest books or a group of planners, try to drill down to specific types of audiences. So you're not just creating kind of a one-size-fits-all design. Think about, what kind of design would I create if I was creating for a teenage girl, or a woman in her 30s, or a professional man? When you're thinking about it this way, that's going to inspire you to come up with completely different designs. Now, having said that, it is okay to reuse certain designs up to a certain point. If you've got a great piece of artwork that you think would look good on a planner, a journal, a notebook, go ahead and do that, and just state in your description, if you like the design of this planner, this exact design is also available as a notebook or a journal or whatever it is. That can actually be beneficial to you because some people, they like to have matching stationery. So, If someone's got this, interested in one of your designs for a planner, they might also be interested in the same design available as a journal. And that might be something that they think is great because then they can kind of get the whole set and everything matches. But the important thing is to just not overdo it. What you're trying to avoid here is someone going to your author page and just seeing a total wall of the exact same design, because that is going to create a confusing customer experience, and it's only going to cheapen the look of your book catalog as a whole. You can see as I'm scrolling here, these books, really they've used the same type treatment on almost all of them. It's a really similar color palette. There's not really any differentiation here. There's just really not a lot of variation. It all kind of looks the same. So contrast this author page with the last one we just looked at. And you can see that even though they have reused a couple of the layouts here, like these first two, almost an identical layout, but they've used slightly different colors. But in general, even though the style across all of these books is very similar, most of the designs look different. So when you're looking across all of these designs as a whole, you're seeing a cohesive style, but most of the designs are actually different and unique. So you're not just being faced with this wall of books that looks exactly the same. So tell me, are you guilty of making any of these book cover design mistakes in your own low content books? If so, tell me which design mistake you are most guilty of making in the comments below. All right, there you have it. I hope you found that useful. If you'd like to find out more about how you can start generating passive income selling journals, planners, notebooks, and more on the Kindle Direct Publishing platform, then be sure to download my free guide, 3 Steps to Publishing Your First Low Content Book in Less Than a Day. I've left a link to that for you in the description below. And also, feel free to join my free Facebook group, Low Content Profits. I've linked to that in the description below as well. Check out these videos next for more design-related low content book videos. And if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching.